I'm going to be busting some yoga myths today. Yes, that's right. I am going to be busting some yoga myths because there are so many misconceptions, so many myths out there about what yoga is and what yoga isn't. So I decided today I'm going to bust some myths. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Karin from Karinyogalife, and I am a certified yoga teacher based in Kingston, Jamaica. And I specialize in teaching women over 40, especially women with joint pain, but really women over 40. So I talk to lots of people, and I'm really tired of people telling me that they just can't do yoga because they're not flexible. I ask people all the time, so have you ever tried yoga? Sometimes they tell me, no, I haven't ever tried yoga because I'm just not flexible. So that is the first myth that I want to bust. I want to bust that myth once and for all. You don't have to be flexible to do yoga. You don't have to be flexible to do yoga. Everybody say it with me. You don't have to be flexible to do yoga. As a matter of fact, yoga has maybe even more benefits for people who think they're not flexible, because in doing yoga, the process of doing yoga, you will definitely become more flexible. You will improve your flexibility. So I really want to bust that myth that you have to be flexible in order to do yoga. So I know that the yoga industry in the West markets yoga as this thing that you have to be flexible to do. You have to be able to get your foot behind your head or your head to your knees or all kind of crazy pretzel positions. I know that that's how the yoga industry in the West is marketed, and it's wrong. It's just wrong. It really annoys me to see all these complicated positions, because it really is not about, it's not really about coming into any complicated position. It's really about just doing what you need to do for your body. So the second myth that I really want to bust is that you don't have to be young. You don't even have to be female. So that's two. You don't have to be young, you don't have to be female, because I know a lot of people think they're too old to do yoga. You know, the yoga industry again portrays yoga as something that young people do, that women mainly do, and it is absolutely not about being young, it's not about being female. As a matter of fact, as I said, I specialize in teaching people who are over 40. I have a lot of people in my classes, 60s, 70s, 80s. My dad, who is 87 years old, does yoga with me. So I teach a chair yoga class, which is great for older people who don't want to get up and down off the floor. They want to just be seated or standing, and so they can work on their balance. So yoga is for anybody, any age, and as I said, it's not just for women. I had a conversation on Twitter the other day with some guys, and they were complaining that yoga is not marketed to them, that yoga is really marketed as something that women do, and men feel kind of left out. They're like, how come we can't do yoga too? So I wanted to really bust that myth that yoga is not just for women, it is also for men too, even though I personally teach mainly women. But actually men are welcome in my classes, men are actually also welcome in my membership Bloom, even though it is primarily for women, and we do talk about a lot of women's issues when we do our wellness talks. But it is absolutely open to men. My classes are open to men. So if you know any guys who you think would benefit from yoga, please encourage them to give it a try. So the next myth that I want to bust is that yoga is not a religion. Yoga is not a religion, guys. Yoga is not a religion. So I know a lot of people, especially in Jamaica, think that yoga is some kind of religious practice. It is absolutely not a religious practice. But it was created over 2,000 years ago in India as a way of life. It was meant to be a wellness way of life. Now, there were elements of it that you could consider religious or spiritual. It did have an intention of becoming closer to whatever you consider the divine to be, but it was not created to be a religion. As a matter of fact, the physical practice of yoga, which we call asana practice, the physical practice of yoga is just one small element of what the whole entirety of yoga is about. So I will probably talk more about those things in a future live, but the physical practice of yoga was just one small part of what yoga was about when it was originally created. The other elements include things like nonviolence, being good to yourself, being good to other people, being compassionate. So it really was more about a wellness way of life than it was about being a physical practice. So the next myth that I want to bust is that you can really get whatever you want out of yoga. In other words, it's not any one thing that you have to be getting out of yoga. So I tell people all the time, if you want to use yoga as something to use as a form of exercise, simply just to exercise, move your body, get stronger, get more flexible, you can simply use yoga as a form of exercise. It doesn't have to be anything else for you. If you want to use yoga to relax, release stress, release anxiety, you can absolutely use yoga to do that as well. It is great for relieving stress, for relieving anxiety, and you absolutely could just come and do types of yoga that are good for relieving stress. If you want to use yoga as a form of meditation, because we do meditation in classes, the breath practices that we do are a form of meditation. So if you want to come to yoga and only take from it the meditation elements and even use it as a way for you to communicate with whatever you consider to be the divine power out there, I call it Ule, the universal love energy. So you could absolutely use yoga to do that as well. There are so many different types of yoga. That is probably another myth that I should bust. There is not any one way to do yoga. There's not any one type of yoga. There's so many different ways to do yoga, so many different types of teachers, and I really want to emphasize that. So I think I've busted lots of myths today, and I would love to answer your questions. If you have questions for me about yoga, what it is, what it isn't, please let me know.